Hello everyone, I am TheBlevins coming to you here from heroesofartifact.com, and today I'm going to talk about the decks from PAX West. And this is going to be a whole series of videos, so you can check out those other videos, video links as well. The first one here I'm going to do is the Red Green Armored Cleave deck. So this was a favorite of a lot of the players that we've seen in the live stream. I'm going to go through here and I'll talk about all the cards, some of their interactions, and what I think of their strength, weaknesses, etc. So let's just jump right into it. So here's the little short description of the deck here. Dominate the lane with heavily armored and hard-hitting troops. Cleave allows your heroes to spread damage around to all your foes, cutting a bloody swath through your enemies. Break the symmetry of grand melee by deploying armored units against squishy, unarmored enemies. It's only a matter of time before your army is the only one left standing. So, a shining description there for the Red Green Armored Cleave deck. Let's start with the first hero here. That is Lycan. Lycan is a green hero, 4 attack, 10 health. He is what I would consider a creep neutral hero, and if you're wondering what that is, you can check out my video on creep positive, creep negative, creep neutral. But definitely check that out. I'll try to post a link somewhere here, but I'm not a genius, so I'm not gonna do that. I might not be able to do it. I might fail, guys. Don't worry. But Lycan's ability here is Feral Impulse. It's a continuous effect. Lycan's allied neighbors have +2 attack. So Lycan has decent stats on his own. He's trading with 5 creeps and providing a neutral exchange of gold for yourself and your opponent if you just attack creeps. But he's also giving your creeps the ability to kill their creeps and actually net you a gold for each of your creeps if he's in between 2 of your own creeps. He also can be moved around potentially to alter combat against your opponent. He's got a lot of very strong effects. He's not, of course, very good on his own because you want to have allies next to him. However, that shouldn't be a problem with the 2 melee creeps spawning in every turn. His signature spell here is the Savage Wolf. It's a 4 mana, 3/3 green creep. That has the ability modify Savage Wolf with +1 attack and +2 health after the combat phase. So, first time you deploy him, he's not able to kill a creep, but at the end of the turn, if he just attacked a creep, he would end the turn with 4 attack and would keep the 3 health. So he's always able to survive that creep. He's healing up the 2 health that he took from the creep. And then if you use anything to heal him, he ends up getting very strong and starts being able to one-shot those creeps down. So Savage Wolf, a pretty, not a super strong card, but it is a decent card that if it goes unchecked or if it just is attacking creeps, it's going to end up getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's eventually potentially going to be able to get out of control, though that it does take quite a while. But having a somewhat sticky threat seems like it's pretty strong, even though 4 mana is quite a bit here. But it is a relatively sticky threat that might be able to gum up your board and deal with creeps that are attacking your face. So let's move on here to the second hero. That's going to be Axe. Axe is a red hero, 7 attack, 2 armor, and 11 health. Very, very infinitely, in fact, creep positive. He's never dying to creeps, neutral melee creeps. His ability is meat, is beef, is strength, is muscle. He has no ability. He needs no ability. His ability is built into his stats with that whopping 7 attack. 2 armor is huge, and 11 health. He's never dying to melee creeps. They're just not able to deal damage through that 2 armor. And with 11 health, even if you have something that gets through that armor, he's going to be surviving quite a few attacks just in his base stats. So Axe, very strong early game hero. Has the potential to actually one-shot certain heroes. I believe Crystal Maiden and maybe a few other blue heroes, Earthshaker notably as well, have 7 health to start. So you could potentially be one-shotting those heroes right at the beginning of the game. Of course, Axe not having a continuous or active ability does make him a little bit weaker in the mid to late game, but if you can build upon that early game advantage that he creates, maybe buy some early equipment and make him even stronger, Axe is definitely going to be a foe to be reckoned with. You move on to his signature spell. It is Berserker's Call, and you choose an allied red hero. It battles its enemy neighbors. So this card, very, very strong. It does serve as, I believe, an instantaneous attack in addition to the combat phase. So you can have your axe that's fighting all three of its enemy neighbors. So enemy neighbors means what's directly across from the hero, as well as the allied neighbors of the enemy. So the two heroes next to, or the two units next to that hero that's directly across. So he's potentially fighting up to three different targets all at once. And a card like this, if you have an axe and you potentially modify him with some extra armor, some extra attack, some extra health, he is, even if he doesn't survive, if you can take out two heroes or another hero plus some creeps or other units, it is a very favorable exchange, and potentially is shutting your opponent off of colors to play in the round, potentially swinging the tide of the lane into your favor. It's a somewhat expensive spell at 6 mana, but if you have a hero like Axe, you can put a lot of equipment and modifications on him and be able to get a lot of value out of that Berserker's Call. Going to be a very strong card, in my opinion. Moving on here to the third hero, we've got Pugna. Is also a red hero. 6 attack, 9 health. That is just at the minimum health to be creep neutral. Pugna's ability is Nether Blast, which is an active ability. Not sure on the cooldown. I believe it's 2 turns, but don't quote me on that. The artifact buff does not have the cooldowns for the abilities on here, but that active ability is Condemn a random enemy improvement. So Pugna, a very scary hero, a very threatening hero for a deck that relies on improvements. Now, improvements can range for anything from 3 mana improvements that give gold, 4 mana improvements that give mana, upwards of 7 mana improvements that allow you to deal 4 damage in those cannons. So Pugna, just having Pugna in your deck presents a threat that is going to make your opponent play very differently if they have improvements. And the thing about that is, of course, you can only use this Nether Blast ability in the lane that Pugna is in. However, that just makes it so maybe you need to kill your own Pugna, or something like the Phase Boots is going to allow Pugna to move lanes, potentially pick off these improvements. I do imagine that some of the control decks potentially are going to be running a good amount of improvements. Conflagration comes to mind, and being able to basically, as a free action, use your active ability on your hero without spending mana, without spending gold, without spending any other recess other than the cooldown timer. You're going to be able to counter their card and mana investment and potentially swing that lane back into your favor. Very strong ability, but it's a very high power ability, but it is not a broad scope ability. If your opponent has no improvements, this does nothing, but when they do, it's going to be very, very powerful. Pugna's signature card here is Nether Ward. It itself is a 4 mana improvement that you play on a lane. After an opponent plays a spell, deal 3 damage to the enemy tower. So I'm going to be able to set up that basically just slow ticking attack. If there's a lane that's low, maybe it's a board stall, but they're kind of low, you're going to be able to play this in a lane, and every time that your opponent wants to play a spell, they're going to have to think, I'm taking 3 damage, I'm taking 3 damage, I'm taking 3 damage. Really going to change the tide, potentially, of battle here for your lane if it's a board stall. One thing that this doesn't do is affect the board in any way. So if your opponent's tower is at high life, or maybe they've given up on this tower. This doesn't do anything. It doesn't help you get back into a lane if you are behind. So something to note. But if you can use if you can get to a position where you get to use this offensively, it could be quite good. Moving on here, we've got Farva the Dreamer. Farva is a green hero, 4 attack, 11 health. He's got the continuous effect, pack leadership. Farva the Dreamer's allied neighbors have +1 armor. So in the same sense of Lycan, Farva is very good with heroes and other heroes and other creeps and allies. He's giving them armor. Armor is a very strong ability. Our armor is a very strong stat to have because it just flat prevents damage, especially if there's multiple other targets of attack. So it would prevent 1 from each target of attack. So potentially combos well with Axe and other allies for you to use, or other heroes to use Berserker's Call. Very strong. Farva himself is creep positive, so he's able to trade with enemy creeps at a gold advantage before he dies. So that's nice to have. And he also is making your creeps trade with their creeps more favorably, get an extra attack in as well. Armor is very, in my opinion, is a very strong stat to have. I think it's a little bit undervalued right now. So having that extra armor on your neighbors is quite good. If you look at something like leather armor, 3 gold equipment, that equipped hero has +1 armor. So if you think, in a sense, Farva is generating 6 gold worth of value when he has pack leadership up. So very strong ability. It's just a static ability, so you don't need to, or a continuous effect in this game, so you don't need to worry about paying anything or cooldowns. Seems quite decent. His ability, or his signature spell here, is Prowler Vanguard. Is a 4 mana, I'm not sure if it's an ally or a creep, but it is a 0 attack, 8 health creep that has the ability Prowler's Vanguard's allied neighbors have +1 armor. So he's doing this ally is doing a lot of the same thing that Farva is, except this particular ally doesn't have any attack, so he's just soaking up damage potentially from some creeps. Put him in front of a creep, he's taking 4 hits. He's not doing anything back unless you modify him, but he's making his neighbors much more resilient. So this card seems a little bit less powerful than I was expecting, but if you have a Prowler's Vanguard on one side and Farva on the other side, all of a sudden you've got a either another hero or another ally of some sort with 2 armor at no gold cost. So could definitely be strong. Again, this card is in a sense generating 6 gold worth of value if you use the leather armor as a base there. Moving on to the last hero here, we've got Legion Commander. Is a red hero, 6 attack, 1 armor, 8 health, with the ability Moment of Courage. Continuous effect, Legion Commander has +2 retaliate, which if I am which I believe is when they are attacked by when they're attacked by someone that when they're attacked by an enemy, that enemy is going to take 2 damage regardless of whether Legion Commander attacks or not. So it's possible that Legion Commander is attacking a hero across from them, but someone diagonal is attacking them, and Legion Commander is not necessarily attacking back. Legion Commander is going to always do 2 damage to both of those. So and we'll talk about the I mean, you can already see the synergy here with Berserker's Call, because that means if you can get Legion Commander to attack all 3 of those, that's already 6 extra damage if they're attacking 3 people. 6 extra damage there. Very strong with the Berserker's Call. Legion Commander's signature spell here is Duel. Choose an allied red hero and another unit. They battle each other. So it's almost like a mini Berserker's Call. The notable difference here is that they don't necessarily have to be neighbors. You can have Legion Commander on one side, and they have to be in the same lane, but if they're not, you can have Legion Commander duel with a hero or unit that is not Legion Commander's neighbor. Notably, obviously, you have to pick a red hero here, where Berserker's Call is just... no, Berserker's Call is also a red hero, so it is kind of like a mini Berserker's Call, but it costs significantly less and has the ability to go further than just the neighbors. I think Berserker's Call is a much higher power level card, but I think Duel is probably better overall. It gives you a little bit more versatility. It's much cheaper, and obviously with Legion Commander, both of these cards are great with Legion Commander, but Legion Commander, well, there's another card that I'll talk about later that has a lot of synergy with all of these cards. Let's move on to the spells and minions here, spells and other units here. First one here is Poised to Strike. So 1 mana red spell, give a red hero +4 attack this round. This is just another, it's a cheap way to turn the tide of battle, potentially. It's very narrow. Obviously, it has to be a red hero. But when you think about the cards we just talked about, Duel, Berserker's Call, you're potentially getting a lot of value, especially Berserker's Call, because that's really like an extra 12 damage you're doing, because it's battling all of them. It doesn't divide the damage out. It does all of its damage to all of them. So very potentially good combo card here if you need to push that extra damage to trade with something or kill another hero. This is a very cheap way to be able to do that. It's always nice to have these cheap ways to potentially interact with your opponent's board. Very nice card indeed. Next card here is Bronze Legionnaire. It's a 2 mana red minion, 4 attack, 2 armor, 2 health. So this is the Creep Killer. Creep Killer. He's always killing a creep, and he's not taking any damage from the creeps because he has the 2 armor. However, he does have 2 health, so he is going to die to any 4 attack minions. But anything with 2 or fewer attack is not actually going to be able to do anything to him. The 4 attack is nothing to sneeze at. Very strong card. We've seen other we see other cards in black that are basically the same thing without the armor. So it's very interesting to see that red gets a card that's basically strictly better than the black spell, or the black minion. But very strong card to just be able to put a little bit of pressure on, and if they have 2 or fewer attack, he's not taking any damage. If they have 3, he's surviving, but anything higher than that, he's trading. But he's at least doing 4 damage. It's a very cheap spell, and potentially if you could modify him with other things to give him more health or more armor, he could be quite a threat as a 2 mana minion. So very nice there. Very nice card there. We talked about Duel already. Moving on here to Grand Melee. It's a 3 mana red improvement, and it says if there is an allied red hero in this lane, all heroes have +2 cleave. So this is an improvement you can play in any lane, and it's going to give all the heroes in the lane +2 cleave as long as there's a red hero. So if the red hero dies or leaves or something else, this isn't the effect isn't there anymore. The improvement is there and will turn back on if a red hero comes back, but as long as it's not as long as the red hero is not there, it's not going to affect. Cleave, of course, is allows you essentially to do +X damage to the 2 diagonal targets from you, the ally or the neighbors of the normal attack, and where X is the amount of cleave. So if something has +2 cleave, it's going to do 2 damage to those 2 diagonal targets. If it has +5 cleave, it's going to do 5 damage to those targets, regardless of what your attack is. So cleave is very strong, especially in a crowded board state. You're going to be able to do quite a bit of damage. I'm not 100% sure how cleave works with something like Duel or even Berserker's Call. Does it do additional damage? Does it cleave beyond the targets? Not exactly sure. We're going to have to wait on that, but it seems regardless of those interactions, cleave very good, doing an extra 2 damage. It adds up over time for sure. Moving on here, we're going to move to the Mercenary Exiles. This is one of my favorite cards that I've seen so far. It's a 3 mana red creep. It is a 2 attack, 1 armor, 4 health creep. It has an active ability with a cooldown of 2 It says spend all of your gold and modify Mercenary
Stay
Exiles
a while and listen.
With it has modify your it has modify Mercenary Exiles with plus X attack and plus X health, where X is half of the gold spent. So this is a potentially very strong card. It is a gold sink. If you have a glut of gold and there's nothing good to spend it on, you've all of a sudden got a very reasonable, very strong minion to spend it on. Could be very, very powerful there. And it's 3 mana. It's very cheap and potentially has late game implications. The armor and 4 health is quite decent. It's killing creeps in the early game, and if you want to put gold into it in the mid or early game, you can. And in the late game, if you have a glut of gold, it could get quite big. We've seen times where it's not uncommon to have 20 gold, and if you're giving plus 10 attack and plus 10 health, all of a sudden that seems really quite strong. Especially for a non-hero. Of course, this can get condemned and destroyed and what have you, but having the ability to have a threat that isn't a hero, in addition to your heroes who are also threats, is going to be very, very strong, I believe. This is one of my favorite cards that I've seen so far. Moving on here to Rebel Decoy, 3 mana green creep. It is 2 attack and 3 health, and he has a active ability with 1 cooldown. Swap Rebel Decoy with another ally. This card is very strong. Being able to move allies around, very strong. Just switching up and moving combat is very strong. Of course, he has very weak stats, but being able to just jump around and potentially just have that onboard trick to move people around in the lane, very, very strong. I'm not 100% sure if this can swap in any lane, but I'm assuming, since it doesn't say that it is only in the lane, so it's not as good. But being able to move your heroes around, and even in lane, is very strong. And at 3 mana, it's not super expensive, but it does have bad stats. So you're certainly going to be using this for this ability and basically nothing else. Moving on here, we've talked about Netherward, Prowler Vanguard, and Savage Wolf. We're going to go to Salamander's Favor, a 4 mana improvement that says, a 4 mana green improvement that says your tower has +2 mana. And notably, you can play this on any tower. So I've heard the dream is turn 2. So you start with 3 mana. On turn 2, you'll have 4. In lane 1, you play Salamander's Favor on your 3rd lane. In lane 2, you play a second Salamander's Favor on your 3rd lane. And then your lane 3 is going to have 8 mana on turn 2. So the explosiveness and, for lack of a better term, meme factor for Salamander's Favor seems very strong. Just in general, giving extra mana and mana ramp is a very strong ability in card games. So even though it's 4 mana, just the ability to really overload and potentially overload and fix up a lane early is very strong. Of course, this comes with the downside of, if you draw it late, it does nothing on the board. If you're behind in a lane, it does nothing. If you don't have any cards in your hand, it does nothing, etc. Like, it's not a 0 risk card, but it does give you that explosiveness potentially that can really allow you to get ahead in the early game. Moving on here, we've got the 4 mana Smeevil Blacksmith green creeper ally, 2 attack, 2 health, has a play effect. So when you play it, this effect happens. Modify a random allied hero with +1 armor. Notably here, modify me is a keyword that lasts even after death for heroes. So when you modify a random allied hero with +1 armor, they're keeping that even after they die and respawn. So basically a leather armor on a 4 mana 2 attack 2 health minion. Not the best stats, in fact maybe the worst stats, and 4 mana is not cheap, but you're getting 3 gold worth of value for in terms of leather armor. It's not taking up an armor slot, and you're also potentially blocking some damage and maybe trading off and killing a creep or something. So you're getting a couple of golds worth of value and potentially making, you know, your Axe or your Legion Commander even stronger and even harder to kill. So I don't think this is the most powerful card, but the effect is very strong. It's just very weakly statted, and we'll have to see if, you know, spending 4 mana is going to be worth that ability. Moving on here, we've got, let's talk about the Ogre Conscript. Is a 6 mana red creep Ogre Conscript. 7 attack, 2 armor, 7 health. So just a big old dude. Very hard to kill, very strong creep here. It is, I know this one's a creep just from the videos, and it's strong, especially early game. If you can get it out, if you can get a Salamander's Favor out, I mean, on turn 2, you can play Salamander's Favor on either your second or third lane to be able to play this out on turn 2 and start killing creeps without having to worry. This doesn't die to creeps. It could chunk some, you know, it's got the same attack as and an armor as Axe, who's a hero. So having that early is going to be very strong. The problem is, he's a creep, which has some negative consequences with some spells that specifically target creeps, and spells and abilities that specifically target creeps, but very strong early game. If you can get it out, maybe get some gold value out of it, it's going to be a good time for you, and potentially can modify it with some other abilities and whatnot. And last card here in the deck is Divine Purpose. 7 mana green spell. Modify a unit with damage immunity. And again, modify, lasts forever. Damage immunity. Does exactly what you think it does. The unit takes no damage. So put that on maybe a Legion Commander or an Axe and start Berserker's Calling and dueling, whatever you like, without any sort of repercussion. This is the Wombo combo. It makes your guy unkillable from damage. Now, of course, they could still get condemned, or there's potentially other ways to do it. Maybe they can move. So seems very, very powerful, but it can be dealt with. The one thing to note here about Divine Purpose is that if your opponent's deck has no way to kill the unit, that means the unit's never going to die. So if you have Axe and you've made Axe and you've made him unkillable, you have to be mindful that Axe is probably never moving from that lane if you put Divine Purpose on him. If Axe can't die, Axe can't move lanes, and I don't believe that there's any way to move lanes in this deck. So potentially you have phase boots or something. Maybe you can do that in another deck. But just be mindful that if you don't have ways to move your heroes into other lanes with cards, the only other way to move them is to have them die and let you respawn them in a different lane. If your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with Divine Purpose, you're committed to that lane, and we've heard the stats that just about 10% of games end with taking the second tower in the same lane. You have to do an extra 40 damage in that case, so you really need to commit if you're going to do Divine Purpose if you think you need that hero in another lane. So just something to note. It's a very powerful spell, very powerful effect, something that is going to win a lot of games, but just be mindful when you're playing the card for that. Moving on here, we'll quickly go through the item cards here. Leather armor, 3 gold, equipped heroes +1 armor. Very basic here, of course, is in the armor slot. Traveler's Cloak, 3 gold, equipped heroes +4 health in the health slot. Blade of the Vigil is a 7 gold attack slot item. Equipped hero has +2 attack and +2 cleave. And the last one here is the Book of the Dead, a 10 gold health slot item. Equipped hero has +4 health. Add a charge to Book of the Dead after an allied melee creep dies, and it has a 2 cooldown active ability that says summon a zombie for each charge and remove all charges. Not sure what a zombie is. Don't know what the stats on a zombie are. We'll find that out at some point, but seems like a pretty decent one. This is obviously going to be a decent one if you have a lane where you've got a lot of creeps. and you want to keep pushing that lane, you can, commit a lot to that lane and have the Book of the Dead and resummon a lot of zombies for all the creeps that died. So we're gonna have to see how that one turns out. It doesn't seem as powerful as some of the other, level 25 items that we've seen, but it seems pretty good regardless. But that is gonna be it for the Red Green Armored Cleave deck from PAX. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion here. Let me know what you think. Was I right? Was I wrong? Do you like this deck? Do you not like this deck? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. You can follow me, TheBlevins, on Twitter at @the_Blevins on Twitter. Follow the live stream, which is where I stream all of this, at twitch.tv/TheBlevins. And remember to check out heroesofartifact.com for all of the artifact content you will ever need. But that is it. I'm TheBlevins. Thank you for watching.